Hello, and welcome to Founder Freedom from Hustler to CEO, the podcast built for e-commerce entrepreneurs and small businesses who are ready to work less, earn more, and scale smarter. I'm your host, Stephen Palmer, and today we're hearing from a founder who turned a snowy night and a late-night news clip into a multi-brand product empire. Meet Ed Brookmyer, founder of Bareground, a company that's reshaped how we think about winter prep, small space farming, and surface care. Let's jump in with Ed. Welcome, Ed. How are you doing today?
Hi, Stephen. Very nice to see you again.
Thank you.
I'm doing well.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about Bareground's value prop? What do you bring to the world through Bareground?
Yeah, certainly I can. I started Bareground about 30 years ago, and one of the main focal points of the company at that time, and still remains, is an emphasis on environmentally friendly alternative winter products. And so one of the products that we had introduced in 1996, which we still sell now, was a liquid de-icing product that had some very interesting and unique environmental characteristics. It was essentially a salt-based liquid that, when a corrosion inhibitor, it was actually a corn-based corrosion inhibitor that was coming out of a plant in Minnesota, was added to this magnesium chloride, it would reduce the corrosive nature of liquid salt to about that of distilled water.
Nice.
And that really piqued my interest. We were a little bit before our time because there wasn't as great an emphasis on environmentally considerate products in 1996 as certainly there is now in 2025. But we jumped on that at the early stage of the development of a certain consciousness about what you were putting down on roadways, the effects that these things had on infrastructure. And more people were beginning to use things like brick and bluestone and marble and granite in their outdoor landscaping.
Right.
And we thought that this would make a terrific alternate product as opposed to just plain old corrosive rock salt that ate up your cars and so forth.
Yeah, mucks up your feet.
Yeah, it sure does.
Well, that's awesome. That's really, really specific, folks, in case you're paying attention. Ed has a very specific intention on solving a gap in the marketplace. So, Ed, what inspired you to create the brand once you made this discovery about this product?
Well, I suppose that, as with a lot of things, one thing flows into another. When we first came up with the idea of offering a liquid de-icing product, we then thought, well, if we're just selling someone a bottle of liquid, that's not really going to be enough, because there are people who are going to want to have a way of applying it. They're going to want to have an applicator.
Yeah.
Therefore, why don't we find an applicator that we can ship to the customer with the gallon inside it? So we did that, but then we had a refill also. And then we thought, well, why not create larger sizes? There are going to be people who don't want just 1 gallon. They're going to want 2.5. They're going to want 5.
Right.
And from one thing, it led to another. It led from just a magnesium chloride to a very popular calcium chloride, which is a slightly different type of liquid de-icer. So before I knew it, we were looking at a wider and wider variety of products. And nowadays, we've got salt-based, which are the chlorides, and we also have non-salt-based. We have things that you can use on runways: potassium acetate, potassium formate, So the line itself virtually wanted to grow itself. And our customers, as we listened to what they were telling us, we would
Right.
find the products to fit their needs.
Awesome.
So,
Perfect story of brand creation.
yeah, and we parlayed that into a range of outdoor products for with an environmental slant
Mm-hmm.
for spring and summer.
Sure.
And we created another trademark line of product, and that in itself began to want to grow also.
Right.
So we always had the mission of trying to find things that were more environmentally friendly and wherever possible, an alternative to chemical applications.
Right.
So even in our outdoor spring and summer line, which we do mostly under the brand name of Just Sensational, when we got involved with like small animal repellents, we found things that were non-chemical based.
Mm.
When we got involved with soil enhancement and fertilizers, we tried again to find products that were not necessarily always chemical based.
Right.
Liquid fish as a fertilizer, brown algae, chitosan, which is from shellfish as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, we try to stick as much as possible with what we perceive to be our mission statement.
Right. I like it. So that kind of preempts this next question, which is, and I'm going to kind of give the answer first and then ask the question. So the major challenge or gap that you saw in the market was that you wanted to provide these environmental friendly chemicals to do the jobs of the chemicals that you saw in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So you were one of our first environmentalists.
In a sense, I mean, we teamed up at one point with the World Wildlife Fund,
Mm-hmm.
and we did all sorts of uh, a lot of environmental research into where people were moving with the whole environmental movement.
Right.
And so we tried to find and or design products sometimes that would fit that niche.
Like it. So the second follow-up question in this section about problems is what was the existing way of doing things that you found broken or inefficient? Let's just hear your words on that.
Well, with regard to the ice melt business, what we found is, and it still goes on today, there is a tendency amongst those people who are involved with snow removal and snow control to go strictly for the least expensive alternative product,
Sure.
which was and remains probably rock salt. But rock salt can be very detrimental to infrastructure, to plant life, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the driving factors. And the other was all of the bad publicity around certain chemical weed killers that had glyphosates and some of the common products. It's tough to get people to change their habits.
Sure.
And that I find, even to today, is extremely challenging, especially when you're dealing with old timers in the ice melt business or people that go into mass merchant locations and they're inundated by chemical solutions to everything.
Yeah.
There are more and more people who shy away from it. Don't get me wrong there. But
Mm-hmm.
I've watched now for nearly 30 years the slow pace of transition.
Yeah.
I think one of the important things for us has been sticking to the mission
Mm-hmm.
because, it gets frustrating after 20, 25 years when you're selling certain environmental products and the real estate within a retail store, the buyers, the merchants will say, well, we don't know if we've got a demand yet. It's like, why not test it? Well, that real estate is expensive.
Right.
And, we have to know before we take the chance. And there are people who shy away from it and say, yeah, I'm going to grow old and gray before we have a chance to hit the big times.
Yeah.
So you got to have that perseverance. You have to have the vision. You have to have the perseverance, and you have to find alternative methods, alternative ways to get your product to market. Much easier now than it has been,
Yeah.
in the past 30 years, with the
Digital.
internet being what it is,
Yeah.
Google being what it is, with TikTok and all of these other things, it's become easier to get your story told.
Yes, for sure, which is what we're doing here today.
That's true, I suppose.
Thank you. So that's a great, thorough answer of the gap analysis. So how do you feel that your company solves these problems better than the old chemicals that are out there?
Well, I think certainly the alternatives that we offer now are the solution that people are looking for. I think we've got or have created a range of alternate products, including some new ones that we're just coming out with now.
Okay.
Horticultural vinegar to replace your standard grass and weed killer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more natural product. So I think that we've looked at it. We understand, I think, where people are going with their product needs,
Mm-hmm.
and we continue to look for and design new things.
Nice.
We try to isolate problem areas and then try to find solutions. I'll give you an example if I have time to.
Sure.
There's a product that we're just working on right now to introduce. It's called Spot Away. Now, what it is a preemptive treatment for grass so that you can neutralize dog urine and dog feces and avoid brown spotting. Now, how did that happen? Well, it really happened out of my own personal need.
Sure.
I've got a dog that goes to the same place, and every year I go through the same routine of, scratching up that grass and reseeding and doing all that, growing a new batch of grass just for him to go out and destroy again by the end of the season. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try to find something to solve my own problem. And I managed to find something from a chemical maker, which will supposedly solve the problem of that spotting with a weekly application sprayed out on the grass.
Nice.
So, that's the kernel of creating new things, is looking within your own situation to find things that you think need improving.
Yes.
And finding a way to get that problem solved.
Yes. A lot of inventors have that mindset. And, I think it's a really high level of thinking that you have acquired and honed, because a lot of people just can't do it. They don't have it in them.
I appreciate that, but I'm not a genius. I'm not a chemist. I'm really a marketing person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a marketing person that sees the opportunity. And I know once I see an opportunity, I can find the resources to get the project put together.
Nice.
I don't do the soup to nuts. I don't formulate the product and go out and create a lab. And that's not what I do.
Yeah, but you got people for that. And you know how to put those teams together.
Right. That's the whole key to it. Identifying the problem that you want to solve, and then looking for the right group of people or team that you can utilize to put together a product. And from that point, certainly my years of contacts in a variety of industries now, has certainly helped and opened up a lot of doors.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great content. So I'm going to go back to the next question. You're going to have to reset your brain a little bit. Okay. So in thinking about your product sales for all the chemicals, when people come to the website, let's say I'm a new guy, just found your brand, and I'm considering a purchase. So what's the biggest misconception that people have about what you do when they're looking at your website?
Well, I think the biggest problem that we face on our website and with our customers is nothing to do so much with the product, but it has to do more with how to get the product to them and how quickly we can get the product to them.
Okay.
The cost of shipping product is a real challenge for everyone that buys products from any online reseller. And
Yep.
a lot of our business is done online,
Okay.
as most people do nowadays buy online.
Yes, for sure.
So there are two things. Of course, Amazon has gone a long way in creating this expectation that whatever you buy, you'll have within 48 hours. Yeah, that sometimes happens. Um, Generally speaking, it's a stretch for a lot of companies, including ours, to be able to do that. Uh, and I think the challenge also is when you ship heavier quantities of product, especially if you're shipping liquids,
You're
as
right.
in a lot of cases we are. The challenge is how to do it cost effectively so that people don't sort of hang up on you
Right.
while they're in that shopping cart and they go, oh my goodness, the rate that UPS wants is nearly as much as the product. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very little we can do about it, but that's probably the greatest challenge to people on the website.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're in that we'll just air quote the Amazon shopping mode. People, I think, are expecting a lot of things to happen too quickly and potentially with, free shipping, which is
Yeah.
I think an acronym that is going to backfire on Amazon someday.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly it puts everybody under, well, everybody, by everybody, I mean every manufacturer
Yeah,
who's trying to do business that way under a tremendous amount of pressure and strain
right,
to prove to the customer, number one, that you're not cheating them when you have to charge them a freight charge,
right,
and tempering the expectation that you've got warehouses all over the United States that are ready to ship your product directly
right,
to them
right.
in a very short window of time. I wish that happened, but it just
Yeah.
doesn't.
No, freight definitely puts a reality on the reach of your company if you're selling, complicated products to ship for
But
sure.
Stephen, we actually ship product all over the United States, and we do it
Mm-hmm.
from one location. And I'll be honest with you, there are times when we get orders, and I wonder to myself how the customer is justifying paying as much as they pay for the freight costs as they do in some cases as much, if not more, than the actual product itself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't really know what it says about the customer demand. They really want the product, so they really are willing to spend that much money.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Well, if they're on that environmental slant and they don't see your products in their own
right.
retail stores
They,
and they discovered you,
yeah,
then that creates, the demand.
right.
Because we're definitely in this environmental mode right now, which is great. It's great for the world and for
Yeah,
people to be aware of these things.
yeah, it is. I mean, certainly with as many products as we can, we work with USDA to create bio-preferred products, or we register with the Organic Materials Research Institute on
Hmm.
as many of our outdoor products as we possibly can. So, we spend a good deal of time registering these things, trademarking these things,
Right.
and making sure that the customer is aware of the fact that these products bear the symbols to justify
Yeah.
claims.
Yep. Yep. No, it's important. And it's one of your differentiators too. So, because not everybody has the wherewithal or the cash to do that type of registration.
Yeah, it's necessary though. You don't get too far unless you're willing to, get certain registrations
Right. Right.
made. But I'm not going to say that there isn't overregulation as well. I think in
Yeah.
certain cases there could be a lot of overregulation, and it could be really time consuming and exhaustive, financially exhaustive
Yep.
process. Trying to keep up with it all.
Right. Okay. Awesome stuff. So reset again. So we're getting back to the retail side of things. So can you share either a customer success story or a big win from a mission standpoint because of your solution that you like to talk about?
Yeah, I suppose that I can. Recently, within the last maybe 2 or 3 years, we have managed to break into retail with certain products with both Home Depot and Lowe's. The initial testing after all of these years of knocking on doors and flying south for me to
Mm-hmm.
meet with these buyers to be told, oh, well, it's really nice, but not yet. We've had some initial success. We've had initial success with Home Depot
Mm-hmm.
on a displayer that we created for their retail locations. Last year, I think we did, if I'm not mistaken, about 140 locations with them,
Okay.
mostly in the Northeast, and that's expanding this year to 555.
Congrats.
Thank you. And with Lowe's, we finally managed to test out in 65 locations, which also proved successful. And so we're doing that again this year.
Nice.
The good news is that once the product proves successful at retail, it's only a matter of time before it'll expand to much greater numbers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't foresee a turnaround where we lose ground now. It's only gaining ground. And interestingly enough, this year also, we did not solicit the business at Home Depot in particular for our solar panel cleaner. They
Mm-hmm.
found us and they did a Google search and they came to us and said, hey, we'd like to try it out in 85 stores in Southern California. Can,
Sweet.
can you create a display
Right.
for us? And I said, sure, we can, of course. Who says no?
Right.
Sure, we can do it. We'll make up a display for you. We
Right.
did. We made up a display, and the whole process of making up that display for Home Depot for ice melt, we transitioned that same display with different graphics to create a solar panel display. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not like we were having to recreate things.
Yeah.
Then it occurred to me, well, we've got lots of other products that we can put in these displays now that we've committed to doing them.
Yeah.
And we can take these displays and try to roll these displays out to Ace Hardware. We can roll them out to supermarkets. We can roll them out to Menards and some of
Yep.
the other characters in the hardware business
Mm-hmm.
that we've been wanting to find ways of doing business with. And, we're constantly focusing on new markets. A big one for me now is the farm and ranch people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I never stop searching for new potential avenues for sales.
Nice. So what kind of trends are shaping the future, you think, of your industry immediately?
Well, I think with ice melt, I think pet friendly, non chloride, non salt based products are going to be more and more available, and people will want that as an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
I think also I see new ways of creating ice melt that are happening now. I know a couple of people who have spent quite a bit of money in developing new technologies
Mm-hmm.
for actual conversion of certain chemicals into ice melt. There's someone who I know that's working on taking carbon dioxide from the air, combining it with uh, potassium chloride, and coming up with a salt-free potassium formate
Mm.
that is being created now. So it's a nice way of taking excess CO2, putting it to a certain use and creating a less expensive version of a non-salt ice melt. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that's happening. I think the harvesting of certain things from the ocean are also producing new ways to revitalize soil and so forth. So I
Hmm.
think that's all happening now.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of interesting technologies that are developing.
Yeah. That's pretty cool that you're on top of all that too. So, in terms of our audience here, other entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
you have some advice for other business owners that are just looking to stay ahead of the curve in whatever they're building today?
Yeah, keep your mind active, keep researching out your field of interest. And I think the most important thing really is communicating with people who are developing these things. I can give you a perfect example if I can.
Sure.
Okay, a couple of years ago, I was watching a YouTube video on a couple of professors at Rice University that had created a nanoparticle that when you focus sunlight on it, it'd actually make the water boil,
Hmm.
which I thought, wow, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did was I reached out to these professors and I said, I'm in the ice melt business. We're up in the north, you're in Texas, but we do ice melt. Wouldn't it be great if we can take a nanoparticle like that and find a way of incorporating it into ice melt so that when the sun shone on the product, it would generate heat and it would melt ice and snow,
Oh, yeah, that'd be genius.
right? 2 years went by, or three, or could be four. And I got a call from one of the professors. And she said to me, You remember me? I said, Of course, I remember your experiment. And she said, Well, I'm partnering with another professor at CCNY in New York, and we think we can now take those nanoparticles and utilize them on ice melt. Are you still interested in working with us? And I said, Yeah, sure. Now, keep in mind, this is someone who I called, I emailed over the years
Yeah.
just to keep it fresh in her mind. And so the long and short of the story is that the professor from CCNY did, in fact, have a coating that he developed using these nanoparticles. We tested it out 2 years ago, works pretty well. Just this year, he asked us whether or not we can take the equipment that he used in his lab up to our facility and make the coating ourselves so that we can introduce more broadly his ice melt product.
Nice.
So, if I wasn't curious then, and if I didn't communicate with them at that point in time, and if I didn't persevere in the communication over the next year or two, I wouldn't have the opportunity that we have now.
There you go, folks.
So,
Never stop talking and writing.
well, yeah, I think having relationships, building relationships with people is probably one of the most important things you can do. Not just texting them,
Right.
not just sending an email, but actually, speaking on the phone,
Yep.
having a call like you and I are having now,
Right.
and keeping it alive. I think you have to like people, you have to like talking to them. You can't
Mm-hmm.
be, as an entrepreneur, it's really tough to be reclusive. You can't do
Yes.
that. You have to have, outreach all the time.
Yep. You're only as good as the team you build.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, I mean, you might have already pre-answered this question about what's next for your company because I think that little story is just fantastic. I mean,
Well, what's next for us? I mean, certainly retail is a big thing.
yeah,
New products are a big thing. As I mentioned before, when I have personal problems with things, I try to create, solutions.
right.
So we're constantly, looking at new things. My latest thing is, finding things for my pet. I watch him skid across the floor. So I
Yeah.
came up with a traction material that I'm going to create this year that you can apply to the paws to give them extra traction on slippery
Oh,
surfaces.
yeah.
So
That's
the
an age-old.
thing. Yeah.
That's an age-old dog thing. Slip and
Yep.
slide.
Yep. So I mean,
Cool.
that's it. New products, new channels of distribution means, new people,
Yep.
new opportunities, new
And
thoughts. It's all good.
it's all good. Awesome. So, great talk, Ed. Very,
Perfect.
very enlightening. Um, how can our listeners get involved with Bareground and what you're building today? What's the best place to
Well,
send them to?
certainly you can visit our website. We have a contact button there. Any kind of, ideas that you have, things you want to discuss. I hope you can get the feeling from just this brief conversation with you, Stephen, that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm open to talking to people all the time and reaching out to people. And I certainly, don't mind sharing, my advice with them on a one-to-one basis. You never know the next great idea that's actually out there that one of your listeners or viewers has that, might be something to be turned into a product. You just don't know.
100%. That's awesome.
So that's
Well,
one good way. The other way is
mhm.
by having them contact you, and you're more than welcome to pass along my email address. I
There
don't,
you go, folks. I can
whatever,
be I
whatever
can be a
works.
connector to
Yeah,
Ed. That's awesome,
you're now
Ed.
part of the network, Steve.
Thank you. So that's a wrap here on Founder Freedom, folks. A massive thanks to Ed Brookmyer for walking us through 30 years of reinvention, resilience, relentless product innovation. From liquid deicer to big box retail shelves, Ed's story is a masterclass on staying in power. Check out bareground.com to see how niche ideas can build lasting brands. And if you like what you heard here, subscribe and share this episode and leave us a review to help other founders find their path to freedom. Until next time, keep creating, keep scaling, and never lose your style. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Stephen.